before in the mid-90s under Sarkozy's mentor, Jacques Chirac. Sarkozy will be hoping the reshuffle will help stop the scandals which are severely damaging his chances of re-election next year. Andrew Potter, Al Jazeera.
Now, over in Egypt, aides for the boss of the Arab League, Amr Moussa, confirmed that he intends to run for the presidency there. We'll have the latest from Cairo in just a moment. And churchgoers in New Zealand hold outdoor Sunday services as aftershocks threaten to flatten their places of worship. Stay with us.
Hello again. We're seeing an awful lot of wet weather across the northern parts of Asia at the moment. The heavier downpours are now moving away from the northern parts of China there. So here they'll be cloudy, just 1 or 2 showers to deal with here. Instead, here's that heavier rain making its way across the southern half of Japan. Very heavy downpours out of that. But this should clear as we head through the day on Tuesday. Then there'll still be a lot of cloud around and 1 or 2 showers, but it shouldn't be the heavy and persistent rain. Now, all of that grey weather does extend further south as well. So for the southeastern parts of China, also lots of cloud here as well. That cloud will be capable of giving us 1 or 2 showers. The heaviest of those will be here, just making their way through Shanghai there. Heavy downpours I expect, particularly during the afternoon. Now, a little bit further south and for the southern parts of the Philippines, the wet weather here really is pepping up. An area of low pressure does appear to be developing, so very wet as we head through the next couple of days here. Elsewhere, there will also be some heavy showers, particularly across Java there. There it does look very wet, even for Jakarta as well. Now, for Australia, the wettest weather here is still in the far north. Torrentially heavy downpours out of this band of wet weather as we head through the next couple of days, so certainly it's very wet here. Further south, it should be an awful lot drier here. Warm for us in Adelaide, but cooler in Melbourne at 19.
It is in the details. A look. A connection. The moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes on Al Jazeera.
Hello again, welcome back. The top story here on Al Jazeera. The Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi has told a Serbian television channel he will stay in Libya. In his latest interview, Gaddafi repeated his claims that foreigners and Al-Qaeda are to blame for the unrest across the country. He also said UN sanctions against him are null and void, and he warned he will crush the opposition. Reports from western Libya say troops loyal to Gaddafi are preparing for a counter-offensive in the city of AlJazeera. The city centre is currently in the hands of anti-government forces. Well, let's speak to Anne Chatelain. She's a project coordinator with Médecins Sans Frontières, and she's joining us from Benghazi in the east. Anne, thanks for joining us. First of all, in terms of medical facilities on the ground there in Benghazi, what's the situation? Hello, Anne. It's Al Jazeera in Doha here. No, I'm being told that that we've lost Anne on the phone line. Obviously, communications in Benghazi very difficult. We'll try and get her back later on. Well, as the violence continues, foreign governments have continued to pull their citizens out by whatever means possible. In one rescue, 2 German planes landed in secret and evacuated 132 people from the Libyan desert. And that follows a covert mission by the British military to bring out 150 British oil workers. Harry Smith has the details.
British oil workers arriving in Malta after being rescued in a military operation shrouded in secrecy. Details are still sketchy, but it's believed 2 British Air Force transport planes entered Libyan airspace without permission. The British refused to reveal exact locations, but it's believed an airfield at Nafura was used to rescue 150 stranded oil workers, who were then flown to safety in Malta.
There was scheduled to be 65, but in the end there was about 130 got on.
Really?
Yeah.
And
we were sitting in the aisles. It's very cramped, but we were just glad to be out of there and getting on the flights.
The British, along with other governments, have also sent warships to Tripoli and Benghazi in attempts to bring out their citizens. But it's thought more rescue missions will be needed to airlift hundreds more oil workers stranded in the south.
As I said, there's still people in the desert, so I can't say too much. I can't say where I came from, etc., etc. Because the guys down there are still doing an excellent job to gather all the guys together and get them evacuated.
The Foreign Office here in London has come in for severe criticism for what's perceived to be its slow response to the plight of Britons trapped in Libya. An official I spoke to a short time ago declined to comment on this latest rescue mission, but said they remain deeply concerned for the plight of other Britons trapped in remote areas of Libya. Harry Smith, Al Jazeera, London.
There's unrest in other parts of the Middle East. In Oman, at least 2 people were killed in clashes between protesters and security forces in the city of Sohar. Tear gas was also used on demonstrators in the industrial city. 8 others were injured. Witnesses say at least 1,000 people had gathered to demand political reform. Well, earlier I spoke to Jackie Spinner, a journalist in Oman, who was in Sohar when the clashes took place.
It's gotten a little quiet after the sun has gone down, and what we understand is that a delegation from the government has arrived in Sohar to try to meet with organizers and discuss their demands. But, you know, the situation was very tense throughout most of the day today. It morphed from a demonstration, which is what it started out yesterday, into a riot. Serious clashes between the police and the demonstrators this afternoon.
And tell us more about the demonstrators' demands and the government response to them. They're after jobs, better salaries, an end to corruption?
Yes, that's correct. Many of the university students in Sohar are concerned that when they graduate, they don't have jobs. Even though there are companies in Sohar who are in a position to hire them, they don't think that they're getting enough work. And so that's where a lot of that discontent stems from. Like some of the other countries, a few of the other countries in the region, nobody in Oman is calling for a regime change. Everyone is very satisfied with the Sultan here, but they are concerned about some of the ministers, and they're concerned about jobs and inflation and economic issues that are keeping a lot of people down.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the loyalty to Sultan Qaboos. He has made some announcements, hasn't he, about an increase in monthly allowances for students. Has that gone down well or not had an effect?
Well, it was just announced this morning, so I don't know if many of the protesters in Sohar even had time to digest that news. But he has been very responsive. There was a big demonstration in the capital here in Muscat last week, and immediately following that, he announced some of the concessions. So he appears to most Omanis to be dealing with this situation in a very proactive way.
Jordan's Prime Minister is promising to introduce new political reforms after the opposition threatened more demonstrations. It comes as supporters of King Abdullah held a show of solidarity in the capital, Amman. The rally follows weeks of nationwide protest by the opposition. Its leaders say the country's pace of reform has been too slow. Now, aides for the Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa have confirmed that he does intend to run as Egyptian president. The Egyptian state news agency made the announcement through its text message service on Sunday. Moussa's office says that while he does intend to stand, his candidacy won't be official until proposed constitutional changes are enacted. Heavily armed police have broken up a pro-democracy protest in Hong Kong. The activists were responding to an online campaign against the government in major Chinese cities. They tried to plant jasmine outside the Chinese liaison office on Sunday, the flower, of course, being symbolic of the uprisings across the Middle East. But the police quashed the demonstration, dragging away several people. Church services have been held in New Zealand for victims of last Tuesday's earthquake. At least 147 people are known to have been killed, but hundreds more are still missing, as Andrew Thomas reports from Christchurch.
Sunday, and for the people of Christchurch, a chance to take stock and reflect on the week their city changed forever. Like so many others, this church was damaged in Tuesday's earthquake, this service taking place al fresco, with the week's events forefront in everyone's mind.
And that's why the chairs are some distance away from the church, because we're all very much on edge and know that there might be another aftershock that comes along, so we're aware of those dangers as well.
As its name suggests, Christchurch was founded as a Christian city, and despite the fact that many of their church buildings lie in ruins, for some, finding solace on a Sunday is the normal, natural thing to do. It is, if you like, a small slice of the ordinary in extraordinary times. It would take something more than extraordinary for any survivors to be found now beneath Christchurch's rubble. Recovering and identifying bodies has become the principal task. It's a slow process, dreadfully slow for the families of the missing. Every afternoon they arrive for a police briefing, their numbers swelling by the day as grieving relatives from abroad pour in. Christchurch was a big tourist town. People from at least 20 different countries were killed in the quake.
They're overseas, they've received dreadful news, they've had to arrange travel in a haste, and they've come to a part of the country that's quite badly affected by the earthquake. Infrastructure's not necessarily there to support them, and all at a time that they're stressed and de-stressed.
Police have to cope with the darker side of human nature too. There has been a spate of looting of abandoned homes, and frayed nerves have meant reports of domestic violence have spiked. Earthquake scars will forever be a physical feature of modern Christchurch, the emotional trauma taking its toll too. Andrew Thomas, Al Jazeera, Christchurch.
Finally, a night of glitz and glamour is just a few hours away as Hollywood prepares for the annual Academy Awards. Outside the Kodak Theatre in Los Angeles, the traditional red carpet is ready for the arrival of A-list film stars. Actors James Franco and Anne Hathaway are hosting the Oscars show. A reminder of the headlines here on Al Jazeera. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi has told a Serbian TV channel he will stay in the country. In his latest interview, he repeated claims that foreigners and al-Qaeda were behind the uprising. And dismissing the UN sanctions against him as null and void, Gaddafi warned he would crush the opposition. Reports from western Libya say troops loyal to Gaddafi are preparing for a counter-offensive in the city of AlJazeera. The city centre is currently in the hands of anti-Gaddafi forces. These are the latest pictures from the city just 50 kilometres west of the capital Tripoli, showing tanks seized by anti-Gaddafi fighters. The rebels have also mounted heavy machine guns on the back of pickup trucks. Fresh fighting has broken out in the Tunisian capital, Tunis. Police fired tear gas and warning shots in the capital to disperse crowds on a third consecutive day of violence. 3 people have been killed and several others wounded in clashes between security forces and demonstrators since Friday. Well, the violence comes as Mohamed Ghannouchi announces that he will step down as Prime Minister. He had planned to guide the country to elections in July after President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali was deposed last month. Former Foreign Minister Beji Caid Sebsi has been appointed in his place. Meanwhile, the crisis in Tunisia has claimed another victim. French Foreign Minister Michel Alliot-Marie has resigned after weeks of pressure over her links to the former president. She flew to Tunisia for a holiday during the unrest in a plane belonging to a businessman with links to Ben Ali. Alliot-Marie also offered French riot police to help quell the unrest. She denied any wrongdoing in her resignation letter. At least 2 people have been shot dead by Omani police on Sunday, according to witnesses in Sohar. Tear gas was also used on the demonstrators in the industrial city. At least 1,000 people had gathered demanding political reform. An Iranian human rights group says 2 opposition leaders have been moved to a so-called safe house in the capital Tehran. Mehdi Karoubi and Mir Hussein Mousavi have been under unofficial house arrest since the start of the month. The government blames them for inciting pro-reform protests 2 weeks ago. Iran's former president, Mohammad Khatami, had been calling for their release.